Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending today's virtual public information workshop for the Central Florida Expressway Authority's Northeast Connector Expressway Phase 1 Project Development and Environment, or PD&E study. Before we begin, we wanted to cover a few housekeeping items. At the bottom of your screen are multiple application engagement tools that you can use. All the engagement tools are resizable and movable, so feel free to move them around to get the most out of your desktop space. You can expand your slide area or maximize it to full screen by clicking on the arrows in the top right corner. If you have any questions during the meeting, you can submit them through the Q&A engagement tool found at the bottom of your screen. We will try to answer all questions during this meeting, but if a fuller answer is needed or we run out of time, we will answer later via email. Please know that we do capture all questions. For the best viewing experience, we recommend using a wired internet connection and closing any programs or browser sessions running in the background that could cause issues. This virtual public meeting is bandwidth intensive, so closing any unnecessary browser tabs will help conserve your bandwidth. This meeting is being streamed through your computer, so there's no dial-in number. For the best audio quality, please make sure your computer speakers or headset are turned on and the volume is up so you can hear the presenters. Some networks cause slides to advance more slowly than others, so logging off your VPN is recommended. If your slides are behind, just refresh the page. You can find additional answers to some common technical issues located in the Help engagement tool at the bottom of your screen. An on-demand version of this virtual public meeting should be available in a couple days. It can be accessed by using the same audience link that was emailed to you prior to this live virtual meeting. So let's begin. I'm Kathy Putnam, Public Involvement Coordinator with CFX Studies. With me tonight are Will Hawthorne, Director of Engineering for CFX, and Dan Kristoff, the Study Project Manager with RS&H. And I'll now turn the presentation over to Dan. Dan?
Thanks, Kathy, and hopefully y'all can hear me out there. If you can't, don't shout. The Northeast Connector Expressway, the Phase 1 project study area is depicted on the screen in red. The northern boundary is near Searles Drive. The southern boundary is parallel to and just south of Nova Road. The project is approximately 4.4 miles in length. The Northeast Connector Expressway project has a long history, which we will summarize on the following slides. In October 2013, the Florida Department of Transportation published a future corridor report, which recommended a collaborative process for Brevard, Osceola, and Orange counties to address a regional connectivity gap between Orlando International Airport and the South Space Coast. This led to the governor's executive order for the East Central Florida Corridor Task Force. The East Central Corridor Task Force recommended two new east-west corridors, Corridor D and Corridor F. The Phase 1 segment of the Northeast Connector will link to State Route 534 and State Route 417 to the west, as well as provide the opportunity to extend the expressway into Brevard County to I-95. The task force final report recommended continuing the project development process for the Northeast Connector Expressway. The recommendation also included connecting to existing east-west corridors, including Nova Road. Osceola County and Deseret Ranches prepared the Northeast District Conceptual Master Plan, which was adopted in 2010. As shown on the image on the right, The Northeast District Conceptual Master Plan includes an expressway connection to Nova Road. It is shown in the gray dashed line. The Northeast Connector Expressway study area is superimposed over the master plan for your reference. This image above shows the CFX 2040 master plan potential new expressway projects. The purple box contains the Phase 1 segment of the Northeast Connector Expressway. While only 4 miles in length, one can see the project's significance as it connects with 3 major regional corridors that were identified in the Governor's Task Force recommendations. Now that we have covered the project history, we will summarize the engineering and environmental analysis that have performed to date. Within the study area, 2 corridors were developed to assess potential impacts. Each corridor is 2,000 feet in width. Corridor A generally follows the alignment shown in the Northeast District Conceptual Master Plan. Corridor B is located farther east toward a potential extension to I-95. Let's examine the constraints that are within each corridor. Wetland systems are prevalent in both corridors, with Corridor B having the greater amount. 100-year floodplains are depicted in pale blue. Corridor A has a slightly higher quantity of floodplains than Corridor B. Currently, there are no formally designated conservation areas located within the study area. While the eastern boundary of Split Oak Forest is adjacent to the study area boundary, the Northeast Connector project does not enter into Split Oak Forest, nor the proposed donation lands. The Prime Natural Resources Conservation Service farmlands are depicted in orange, with Corridor B having more prime farmland than Corridor A. Potential scrub habitat is depicted in the light purple color, with Corridor B having a substantially more acreage than Corridor A. Corridor A is consistent with the Northeast District planned roadway network. The Northeast District anticipates almost 30,000 residential units, over 8 million square feet of commercial space, 2 million square feet of institutional or civic space, and 5,000 hotel rooms. An existing community center and soon-to-be communities are encountered within the study area. The existing St. Cloud Girl Scouts of America facility is located at the southwest corner of the study area and south of Nova Road. The Del Webb neighborhood is under construction, and other Sunbridge neighborhoods are currently in the planning and permitting phase. Through coordination with Osceola County and the developing entities, a corridor between the 2 communities has been preserved for a future expressway. This slide features the social and cultural items that assisted in the selection of a preferred corridor. The directly affected stakeholders favored Corridor A, and as previously discussed, Corridor A is consistent with the project purpose and need and the Northeast District Conceptual Master Plan. This slide represents a comparison of the natural, physical, and engineering features. Corridor B is longer than Corridor A, likely resulting in a higher construction cost, as well as a higher number of wetlands and muck areas. Based on field reviews in the study area, Corridor B is very wet compared to Corridor A. Corridor A is being carried forward for the development of more detailed alternatives. The basis for our decision includes the following items. 1, it is consistent with the Northeast District Conceptual Master Plan. 2, the input that has been directly received from the affected stakeholders. 3, our assessment of the items listed in the evaluation matrix, and 4, the support that was received from both the EAG and PAG members. The new location typical section proposed for the expressway has a 330-foot envelope. An initial 4-lane facility includes a median that allows for future widening of transit facilities. The outer grassed areas provides recovery distance for errant vehicles, noise walls, stormwater collection systems, and slope harmonizing with the adjacent terrain. The study team is currently in the process of evaluating alignment alternatives within Corridor A. Some items for consideration include proposed utility easement along the western side of the alignment, the utility plant near the northern terminus, Bullock Lake, Lake Joel, wetlands, surface waters, and floodplains. Interchanges are currently planned at Brack Road and Nova Road. The Nova Road connection would be an interim connection until the northeast connector is extended further south, or the Osceola-Brevard County connectors extend east-west from this location. This slide depicts the Brack Road interchange options. On the left is the standard diamond interchange. The line work in blue is proposed by CFX, while the line work in brown will be constructed by other entities. A proposed transmission line utility corridor is shown on the aqua dash line to the west of the corridor. This interchange configuration does include wetland and surface water impacts, primarily south of the Brack Road. On the right is a partial cloverleaf interchange. In this interchange configuration, all ramp connections occur north of Brack Road. There are no surface water impacts and very little wetland impacts with this interchange. However, the operational characteristics of the partial cloverleaf interchange are not as desirable as the diamond interchange. This slide depicts the possible interim connections to Nova Road. The interim connection would widen Nova Road to 4 lanes for a short distance to provide separate turning lanes to access the expressway. A future extension of the expressway to I-95 can be developed either north or south along the Nova Road corridor, as shown in red. Nova Road connection options 1 and 2 are very similar. The primary differences are the location of the expressway connection on Nova Road and the angle that the expressway crosses the C-32C canal. Option 2 has less wetland and surface water impacts and is the preferred alignment by Osceola County. The study team has been performing field reviews of the study area and the alignment footprint for cultural resources, contamination, and natural environmental features. The supporting environmental reports are under development. Pond sites will be evaluated once a recommended alignment and interchanges have been determined. Coordination with utility providers is an ongoing process. This study began in July of 2020 and is anticipated to be completed in October of this year. We are currently performing engineering and environmental analyses on the interchange and the alignment options presented tonight. Those reports will be completed and a recommended alternative will be selected and presented to the public at a public hearing tentatively scheduled for August. This concludes the Northeast Connector Expressway Public Information Workshop, and thank you for your attendance.
So Dan, thanks very much. And I did want to remind folks, and by the way, we are going to show this presentation one more time. We know that we do have people who came in late to the meeting this evening, but I wanted to remind everyone, we do have project or study team members standing by to answer your questions. please use the Q&A tab found at the bottom of your screen. A chat box, if you will open up. Just type in your question, and we've got folks standing by to answer your questions. As I had said previously, if we need to do some research, we may need to follow up with you in a week or so via email, but do know that we do capture all questions and they will be answered. At this time, I wanted to, as we've got questions coming in, Dan, I wanted to ask you, what's the purpose of this study, especially when it appears that there's not much traffic in this area?
Okay, well, before we look forward, one thing we should remember is that the Northeast Expressway project has a long history. In October of 2013, the Florida Department of Transportation actually published a future corridor report, which recommended that Brevard, Osceola, and Orange counties collaborate to address that regional connectivity I first spoke about. That led to the governor's task force, and the task force ended up recommending and continuing the project development process. Then the recommendation also included connecting to existing east-west corridors. You may recall that was an important feature of this Northeast corridor. Those connections included Nova Road. All the connections are anticipated as strong growth continues in Central Florida. There's no doubt about that. Development plans in the area suggest a population growth rate, I'm thinking, in about 500,000 people, as my recall is. And that's going to happen within the next 50 years. So this project is to improve mobility, provide connectivity, and remove traffic from some of the local road system.
Okay, very good. Thanks for that. I want to turn to Will Hawthorne, the CFX Director of Engineering. Will, with what, following up with what Dan just said, who would benefit from this expressway?
Great question, Kathy, and I'll echo a lot of what Dan said. I mean, we have hundreds of thousands of people who do and will call Central Florida home. And this section of expressway would link 3 of the 4 new corridors identified in Governor Rick Scott's East Central Florida Corridors Task Force. These additional connections would link 417 ultimately to I-95 in Brevard County, improving regional connectivity and, most importantly, enhancing hurricane evacuation routes.
Okay, well, that is helpful. And as we're nearing hurricane season, that sort of planning is helpful. Hey, Dan, when would this study be complete, and what would be the next steps following the study?
Okay, well, you know, our PD&E study is expected to be completed in October of this year, and we're currently still performing the engineering and environmental analyses. And then these reports, once they're completed, a recommendation of an alternative to be selected still has to be presented to the public, and that'll incur a public hearing, tentatively scheduled for August. Following that input, the next step from the public study team is to recommend a preferred alternative to the CFX governing board. And then the board will decide whether to move the alignment into the production phase, and then also include design and construction. And that's a several-year project, normally anywhere from 5 to 7 years.
Well, and, you know, actually, people are asking, we've got a question about potentially when would this project begin construction? Will, could you speak to that?
Sure. So again, it's largely dependent on our board's approval of whatever the preferred alternative turns out to be. Should they vote in that manner, the next step would be for the project to move into design. That takes time, anywhere from 1 to 2 years, sometimes 2.5 years, depending on the complexity of the project. And then we would then get into construction. So we're still minimum, 1.5, 2 years away from any kind of groundbreaking taking place.
Okay. Speaking of that, possibly in anticipation of that, we do have a question in about right-of-way acquisition and how soon would CFX start buying land for this project. Will, can you speak to that?
Absolutely. So on a typical project, we're starting that process on a couple other projects right now, but that typically begins about halfway through design, or as we call it, 60% plans around that stage. So it's something that, we have to identify exactly what the project entails from a design and engineering perspective. And then we have a really good idea of what kind of property we'll need so that we can start pursuing that.
Dan, typically with studies, people ask about, anybody in the area want to know about sound walls. And would sound walls be part of a new expressway? Is that part of this study?
Yes, we will be completing a noise analysis of the existing conditions. And then based upon the existing conditions, then we'll assess whether the future noise impacts from additional traffic warrant a sound wall. And we'll also coordinate that with potential communities that may feel that they deserve to have a noise wall. One thing to remember is while we'll share all that information, and it will be shared at our public hearing, it's also reanalyzed when you are in the final design process, because we know there's construction going out there, but then we also have a lot more information at our disposal when we do final design. So any of that noise analysis that was done in the PD&E study, a lot of that will be duplicated and engaging. And most of the time, we also engage the public where those potential noise barriers may be placed.
Okay, very good. Yeah, we do plan for that. Dan, one of the questions we have is, would any of this run through, this study area run through conservation lands?
Based on all the research that we've done to date, there is no conservation land within the study area itself. And we certainly all know through the OPE project, there is conservation lands that are adjacent to the split oak forest and the split oak forest itself. But we absolutely will not have any encroachment within the split oak forest, nor Moss Park, or any of the potential compensatory treatment as a result of OPE.
And along those lines, what about planning for wildlife crossings? I know that's come up in advisory group meetings, that question. What about plans for wildlife crossings?
Okay, as soon as we settle down and we have a couple alternatives that we're looking right now, we will focus on, when we have a recommended alternative, then what are the primary locations for the potential placement of any wildlife crossings. And again, we'll have more detailed information at the end of this study to move forward with.
Okay. Will, I want to turn to you. You had mentioned the hurricane evacuation routes. How exactly would this connector improve hurricane evacuation routes?
So the corridor we're talking about tonight, the Northeast Connector Expressway, is proposed to link up with the planned State Route 534, which would ultimately connects to 417. This expressway linkage would enhance emergency evacuation routes, and at the south end of this project is another project called the Osceola-Brevard County Connector. And if this is built, that connection would ultimately connect all the way to I-95 via limited access expressway in Brevard County. It is worthwhile to note that this project does terminate at Nova Road, which is also designated as an evacuation route. So all those things considered, we do have enhanced evacuation routes if this were to move forward.
All right, very good. Will, landscaping. Just much like sound walls and what might be planned for that. People in the area often want to know about landscaping. Is that planned for the project? Can you talk about that?
Good question. So during the design process, we do try to set up certain areas for landscaping to make sure it's maintainable, to make sure we've got areas to kind of meet the palette that we've done on the rest of our system. We typically will design a project, we'll then construct it. Once construction is done, that's when we let our landscaping planners get in and really figure out what works best from a xeriscape approach for the corridor. So it's something that happens right after, right around when construction is wrapping up. We get into the landscape planning phase. Okay.
Dan, I just want to, we've got a question about that connection to I-95, because we've been hearing about that in some of these answers. Just to be clear, is that part of this study?
Okay, that's a great question considering how much activity's out there. The project does not include a connection to I-95. However, as Will has indicated, there's a series of projects that ultimately, if completed, can provide connections over to 417, to State Route 54, and to 95. So CFX is currently performing a high-level planning study that includes several corridors from the Northeast connector to I-95. Again, that is a high-level planning study. And the CFX website, for anyone who might be interested or doesn't have any information, it's on the CFX website, and it is called a Corridor Feasibility and Mobility Study that is underway. And basically, it looks at broad corridors in advance of any PD&E study that may come forward. And that study has not been completed. So, but to go back to what Will has authored, it is not part of our study process.
All right, very good. And yeah, as you had mentioned, we've got quite a few studies underway for potential new expressways. So if folks are interested, please visit the CFX website at cfxway.com and go under the project development and environment studies. And then there's another concept feasibility and mobility studies. And you'll find everything there that's currently underway. Hey, Dan, we've got a question. Somebody looking at the potential of buying a home in the Del Webb community. And they just wanted to know the potential impact of one of these corridors, Corridor A or this project on Del Webb. Can you talk about that?
Sure, and I can understand having some hesitation if you knew all this was going on. Well, one thing is that the authority has worked very closely with Osceola County, and they've also coordinated with the proposed development that's going on with respect to the layout for Del Webb and the layout that's proposed for the Sunbridge community. As I said very early, in case you missed it as part of the presentation, a corridor for the expressway has been held open, and that's through the cooperation. As far as any impacts, I would say that the Northeast Connector will be, we definitely know the Northeast Connector is going to be east of the Del Webb development, and in our opinion should have absolutely no direct effects on that community.
Okay, very good. And, at this time, I'd like to go back and we're going to run through the presentation again. We know that there are some folks who joined us a little late, so we want to be sure that everybody has the opportunity to see the presentation, get the information, and to ask their questions. So we're going to go ahead and start over. And again, we want to welcome all of you to today's virtual public information workshop for the Central Florida Expressway Authority's Northeast Connector Expressway, Phase 1, Project Development and Environment, or PD&E study. Now, before we begin, we did want to go back over some housekeeping items for those folks who may have just joined us. At the bottom of the screen are multiple application engagement tools that are there for your use. All the engagement tools are resizable and movable, so move them around to get the most out of your individual desktop space. You can expand your slide area or maximize it to full screen by clicking on the arrows in the top right corner. If you have any questions during the meeting, you can submit them through the Q&A tab found at the bottom of your screen. And our project team is standing by to answer your questions through that tool. We will try to answer all questions during this meeting, but if a fuller answer is needed, if we need to do some research, or we run out of time, we will answer later via email. Please know that we do capture all questions this evening. For the best viewing experience, we recommend using a wired internet connection and closing any programs or browser sessions running in the background that could cause connectivity issues. This virtual public meeting is bandwidth intensive, so closing any unnecessary browser tabs will help conserve your bandwidth. This meeting is being streamed through your computer, so there is no dial-in number. For the best audio quality, please make sure your computer speakers or headset are turned on and the volume is up so you can hear the presenters. Some networks cause slides to advance more slowly than others, so logging off your VPN is recommended. If your slides are behind, just refresh the page. You can find additional answers to some common technical issues located in the Help engagement tool at the bottom of your screen. An on-demand version of this virtual public meeting should be available within a couple days. It can be accessed by using the same audience link that was emailed to you prior to this live virtual meeting. So once again, I'm Kathy Putnam, Public Involvement Coordinator with CFX Studies. And with me are Will Hawthorne, Director of Engineering for CFX, and Dan Kristoff, the Study Project Manager with RSNH. And Dan, once again, if you will take it away and give us the presentation.
Okay, Kathy, I wasn't expecting an encore, but we'll try and get through again. Here we go. The Northeast Connector, it's the Expressway Phase 1 study area, and it's depicted on the screen in red. The northern boundary is near Searles Drive. Southern boundary is parallel and just south of Nova Road. And the project is approximately 4.4 miles long. The Northeast Connector Expressway project has a very long history, which we will summarize on the following slides. In October 2013, the Florida DOT published a Future Corridors report, which recommended a collaborative process for Brevard, Osceola, and Orange County to address a regional connectivity gap between Orlando International Airport and the southern Space Coast. And this led to the governor's executive order for the East Central Florida Corridor Task Force. The East Central Florida Corridor Task Force then recommended two new east-west corridors, Corridor D and Corridor F. The Phase 1 segment of the Northeast Connector will link to State Route 534 and State Route 417 to the west, as well as provide the opportunity to extend the expressway into Brevard County and connect to I-95. The task force's final report recommended continuing the project development process for the Northeast Connector Expressway. That recommendation also included connecting to an existing east-west corridor, which included Nova Road. Osceola and Deseret Ranches prepared the Northeast District Conceptual Master Plan, which was adopted in 2010. As shown on the image on the right, the Northeast District Conceptual Master Plan includes an expressway connection to Nova Road, and that is shown in the gray dashed line. The Northeast Connector Expressway study area is superimposed over that master plan for your reference. This image above shows the CFX 2040 master plan potential new expressway projects. The purple box contains the Phase 1 segment of the Northeast Connector Expressway. While only 4.4 miles in length, one can see the project's significance as it connects with 3 major regional corridors that were identified in the Governor's Task Force recommendations. Okay, we have now covered the project history. Let's summarize the engineering and environmental analyses performed to date. Within the study area, 2 corridors were developed to assess potential impacts. Each one of the corridors is 2,000 feet in width. Corridor A generally follows the alignment shown in the Northeast District Concept Master Plan corridor. Corridor B is located further east toward a potential extension to I-95. Let's examine the constraints that are within each one of the corridors. Wetland systems are prevalent in both corridors, with Corridor B having the greater amount. 100-year floodplains are depicted in pale blue, and Corridor A has a slightly higher quantity of floodplains than Corridor B. Currently, there are no formally designated conservation areas located within the study area. While the eastern boundary of Split Oak Forest is adjacent to the study area boundary, the Northeast Connector project does not, I repeat, does not enter into Split Oak Forest, nor the proposed donation properties. The Prime Natural Resources Conservation Service farmlands are depicted in orange, with Corridor B having more prime farmland than Corridor A. Potential scrub habitat is depicted in the light purple color, with Corridor B having substantially more acreage. Corridor A is consistent with the Northeast District planned roadway network. The Northeast District anticipates almost 30,000 residential units, more than 8 million square feet of commercial space, 2 million square feet of institutional or civic space, and 5,000 hotel rooms. Certainly a changing palette. An existing community center and soon-to-be communities are encountered within the study area. The existing St. Cloud Girl Scouts of America facility is located at the southwest corner of the study area, south of Nova Road. The Del Webb neighborhood is under construction, and other Sunbridge neighborhoods are currently in the planning and permitting phases. Through coordination with Osceola County and the developing entities, a corridor between the 2 communities has been preserved for a future expressway. This slide features the social and cultural items that assisted in the selection of a preferred corridor. The directly affected stakeholders favor Corridor A, and as previously discussed, Corridor A is consistent with the project purpose and need and the Northeast District Conceptual Master Plan. This slide represents a comparison of the natural, physical, and engineering features. Corridor B is longer than Corridor A and likely resulting in a higher construction cost as well as a higher number of wetland and muck incursions. Based on field reviews in the study area, Corridor B is very wet compared to Corridor A. Corridor A is being carried forward for the development of more detailed alternatives. And the basis for our decision includes the following items. It is consistent with the Northeast District Conceptual Master Plan. A lot of input has been received and provided by directly affected stakeholders. And our assessment of the items listed in the evaluation matrix, as well as the support received from both the Environmental Advisory Group and the Project Advisory Group. The new location typical section proposed for the expressway has a 330-foot envelope. An initial 4-lane facility includes a median that allows for future widening and transit facilities. The outer grassed areas provide recovery distances for errant vehicles, allow for noise walls, provide for stormwater collection systems, and we have the slope harmonizing with the adjacent terrain. The study team is currently in the process of evaluating alignment alternatives within Corridor A. Some items for consideration include proposed utility easements along the western side of the alignment, the utility plant near the northern terminus, naturally Bullock Lake, Lake Joel, the wetland systems, the surface waters, and the floodplains. Interchanges are currently planned at Brack Road and at Nova Road. The Nova Road connection would be an interim connection until the northeast connector is extended further south, or the Osceola-Brevard County connector extends east from this particular location. This slide depicts the Brack Road interchange options. On the left is the standard diamond interchange. The line work in blue is proposed by CFX, and the line work in brown will be constructed by other entities. A proposed transmission line utility corridor is shown in the aqua dashed line on the west side of the corridor. This interchange configuration does include wetland and surface water impacts, primarily south of Brack Road. On the right is a partial cloverleaf interchange. In this interchange configuration, all connections occur on the north of Brack Road. There are no surface water impacts and very little wetland impacts with this interchange. However, the operational characteristics of the partial cloverleaf interchange are not as desirable as a diamond interchange. The study team's been performing field reviews of the study area and the alignment footprint for cultural resources, contamination, and natural environmental features. The supporting environmental document reports are under development, and pond sites will be evaluated once a recommended alignment and interchanges have been determined. Coordination with utility providers will continue to be ongoing. Sorry, I think I just moved one slide too far. Nope. The study began in July of 2020 and is anticipated to be completed in October of this year. We are currently performing engineering and environmental analyses on the interchange and alignment options presented tonight. Those reports will be completed and a recommended alternative will be selected and presented to the public at a public hearing scheduled for August. Now, before concluding this, I think that we have slipped over a slide, and let me see if I can go back and capture it. Okay, here we go. And let me see. Two different alternatives have been studied as we connect down to cross over the C32C canal and connect and pass over the Nova Road area. And you can see that one of the alternatives, or the alternative to the left, allows a connection to go eastward should the connection to Brevard County and I-95 be warranted. And again, the difference between the two, as you can see on the right-hand side, there is a different crossing of the canal. It's more favorable, and a different connection down to Nova Road. However, they both function equally and will satisfy the near-term services. So I apologize for going over this one, and now that concludes our presentation.
Dan, thanks for going back and capturing that. That's really helpful. Thanks for doing that. And now everybody knows that this is truly live.
Yes.
Hey, Dan. I did want to ask you once again about the purpose of the study. As we see on these aerial views, it looks kind of wide open out there, potentially not much traffic in the area now. What is the purpose behind this study?
Well, one thing we need to remember, Kathy, is that this is not a new project. Yes, this PD&E study is new, but the Northeast Connector project was in 2013 looked at as by the Florida Department of Transportation when they published their Future Corridor Report, with recommendations of Brevard and Osceola in Orange counties collaborating with respect to get better connectivity between I-95 and the Orlando area and the Space Coast. And then we had the governor's executive order, which even further demonstrated that there was a certainly need and an interest in moving forward with some connectivities. And the Northeast Connector Expressway was part of that situation, recommending connections to both east-west corridors that included Nova Road. So all these connections were anticipated because of the strong growth. And as I said earlier in the presentation, this small 4-mile link actually connects with 2 to potentially 3 major corridors that can be connected to I-95 and also to the west to State Route 417.
Okay, so pretty important linkage there. And Will, I want to turn to Will Hawthorne, the Director of Engineering for CFX. Looking at this area and in this potential project, what is the benefit? Who would benefit from this?
Well, I've been out to the area, and I mean, people are building, homes are being built as we speak. And to that end, I mean, it would benefit the hundreds of thousands of people who do and will call Central Florida their home. This expressway would link 3 of the 4 new corridors that were identified in Governor Rick Scott's East Central Florida Corridor Task Force. These additional connections ultimately would link 417 to I-95 in Brevard County, improving our regional connectivity and, most importantly, hurricane evacuation for those along the coast.
And, if you would once again, Will, go over that connectivity, because I think that's important to show for that hurricane evacuation improvement, but also that regional connectivity. Can you speak to that again and how this really would improve the hurricane evacuation route?
Absolutely. Can we go to slide 4 or 7?
Yes, I'm going to go right to 7.
That shows, okay, so that kind of gives you a much bigger picture of what's happening. So the corridor we're talking about tonight is the Northeast Connector Expressway, which is highlighted in the purple box there. It is proposed to link with State Route 534, which ultimately will connect to State Route 417. On the south end is the Osceola Brevard County Connector study that's currently underway. And if one of these connections are built, we would have a limited access connection from 417 all the way to I-95 in Brevard County. In the interim, however, Northeast Connector does terminate at Nova Road, which is also considered a critical evacuation route for Osceola County. So hopefully that gives you a better idea of how all these pieces fit together, and how we're trying to strategically go about studying them.
Perfect. Thanks. Hey, Dan, speaking about the study, when will it be complete? And then what are the next steps?
Okay, well, we still have a little ways to go. We expect to be in a position that the study could be completed by October of the later part of this year. And then certainly we would then need to move into other phases of design and construction. The alignment options that were presented today will be more refined. We'll have all those reports completed, and following the public input that we get at the hearing, we'll make a recommendation of a preferred alternative to CFX, the governing board, and then the board has the responsibility for whether the project should move forward into the design phase and the development of construction drawings. And again, that's a couple of years. And Will, you might be able to give us a better idea of some of that next phase timeline that we can anticipate.
Sure.
Yeah,
so,
Will, when would construction begin?
Well, there's several steps that need to take place before that. The first one is we need to get to a preferred alternative, like Dan's talked about before, have a public hearing, and then present that to our board for their consideration. If they vote to approve that public alternative or that preferred alternative, and they would also vote to move that into design. So design would take a minimum 1.5, 2 years, maybe 2.5 years. It's hard to tell at this point. And then construction would start, if things go as planned, not too long after that. So we're still several years out before you see anything take place on the ground. So, I mean, there's still, like I said, still several steps that we have to go through before this actually comes to fruition.
Will, one of the questions we had tonight was about right-of-way acquisition and, CFX buying land for this potential project. Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. So I'll skip the parts. Let's assume that we do, the board does approve this to go into design. Right-of-way acquisition for a standard project, I mean, we're trying to get that done right around the 60% plan level, or in layman's terms, halfway through design, give or take. So, at least around a year into design is when right-of-way acquisitions would start to take place for the project.
Okay, thanks. And I did want to remind everyone that the project study team is standing by and answering questions live. So please use that Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen to send in any of your questions. And as I had mentioned, if we need some research before answering your question, we will follow up via email within the next week. So please know that. Dan, one of the questions people always ask about is about potential noise levels in sound walls. Would sound walls be anticipated with this project? We will be conducting a noise analysis, and the conduction of that noise analysis today also takes into account the adjacent development or the lack thereof adjacent development. So you do need to meet certain warrants in order to provide noise barriers. A lot of that also depends upon the local communities and whether they have an interest in a noise barrier, if we even do meet the qualifications to where one could be justified. More importantly, we know that there's activities going on out there. And as Will said, there's another phase to follow here. So during the design phase, we'll have a lot more information with respect to topography and what's out there. Noise studies are then refined. And if at that time it appears that there may be a warrant and the communities want them, in the past, CFX has been very accommodating with respect to the installation of barriers, whether they be masonry type barriers or whether they may be a combination of masonry barriers and some mounding areas. They may have natural terrain or put some aesthetic features on it like additional plantings. All right, thanks. Hey, Dan, one of the questions was about conservation lands in the area, and does this study area enter into any conservation lands?
Well, one thing that we do recognize before I get to the conservation lands is we do recognize that there is a lot of natural habitat out here. And we certainly want to preserve as much as we can of those natural resources. And our objectives are, to avoid when we can, and if we can't avoid, to minimize and if we do minimize, we also want to enhance what's out there. So right now, although we don't have any formally designated conservation areas, we know we have a lot of natural habitat that we want to blend in with. The thing is, we are not close to split oak forests, and we are not close to all of the conservation areas that are adjacent to split oak forest, nor are we close to the area that's been designated as part of the split oak forest mitigation.
All right, and along those lines, thinking about the natural area and the environment, are wildlife crossings anticipated as part of this study?
Well, we certainly will look at that. We always look at that. We don't look at that with respect to when we have quite a few alternatives. We're lucky in this area that we do have alternatives that are relatively similar because they're within our corridor, so we picked up a lot of information. We're going to have to cross over, for example, the canal at the south end of the project, and there's also a canal crossing at the north end. So in those locations, the roadway is going to be elevated. So if it presents the opportunity for wildlife crossings that would be beneficial, and we'll work with the environmental agencies, those are great opportunities where it can be naturally provided. And there's other areas to where if we have to provide one because there would be a blockage with respect to the natural habitat and how they move through the area, we would consider those locations.
Okay, thank you. And I did want to remind everyone that this meeting and study are being conducted without regard to race, color, national origin, age, sex, religion, disability, or family status. Persons wishing to express their concerns relative to compliance by the Central Florida Expressway Authority with Title VI may do so by contacting me, Kathy Putnam, at projectstudies@cfxway.com, or by calling us at 407-802-3210. Again, that's projectstudies@cfxway.com, or by calling 407-802-3210. All inquiries or complaints will be handled according to CFX procedure and in a prompt and courteous manner. And I also wanted to remind folks that if they have any follow-up questions after this public meeting, they can reach out to us at projectstudies, altogether, at cfxway.com. Dan, I wanted to turn to you. You know, there's quite a bit of talk about an expressway project connecting to I-95. Is this particular study part of that?
Okay, that's a good question because we know there's a lot of projects that CFX has underway in this particular area as well as DOT. And we can truthfully say that the project that we have, the Northeast Connector, does not include any analysis of corridors to the east or to the south or to the north of this. We are exclusively within the 4.5 miles. But as I showed on the slide that I had to go back to, we know we may have an interim connection to Nova Road. We don't know how long that would be. So we can accommodate the other studies that are going on. For example, the connection over to Brevard County is a concept feasibility and mobility study. So it's a very high level. Say if we're at 5,000 feet with a PD&E, they're at probably 15,000 feet high looking down on the topography. And we know they have a number of alternatives. But again, it is not part of our project. I just want to make that clear for you.
Okay. Hey, Dan, we've got about 1 minute left. Would you go through, I'm going to put up the study schedule. Would you just let us know, what's still to come in this study?
Okay, at the present time, we are potentially, well, not potentially, we have the two alternatives that we have within our corridor. We have the existing natural features and any sensitive areas. We are producing reports with respect to all of those natural features as well as the constructed features that may be in that area. So our next phase, as you can see, comes in in March. Well, we're actually through March. In June of this year, we will have a public meeting and a public hearing. That occurs before we go before the board of the CFX. And once we come out of those public involvement sessions, we'll accumulate all the data that we received, compare that to the natural impacts and also the engineering aspects of the project. Again, we'll make a recommendation to CFX, and as you can see, it'll take us into August, and a final recommendation with a final report by September at the latest.
All right. Thank you very much. And that does conclude our virtual public meeting tonight for the Central Florida Expressway Authority's Northeast Connector Expressway Phase 1 Project Development and Environment Study. Thank you for joining us, and have a good evening.